All right, and we are live
All right.
at the 1 week in Kickstarter party. Woo!
Ow, 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 ow.
All right, well, I guess the big news is that we are funded. Funded in less than a day, which is exactly what I wanted to do.
It takes the stress off for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it's been doing a pretty steady backers every single day.
Yeah, I've been watching sort of where traffic's been coming from, and a lot of it has been from places that are advertising that actually had nothing to do with me. It's like a lot of like gaming news sites. Tabletop Gaming News, I think, is like one of the top ones, and it's really cool. I used to have to send in stuff to them, but I guess now they just keep up with me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And if anyone is watching, we have the chat open. So if you want to join in on the talk, just click over there. Yeah. So now I guess at this point, I just got to start drawing like crazy. All right. I think Paul took a couple more, but I still have around 35 drawings to do, which is going to be quite intense over the next month.
That's a lot of drawings.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of drawings. I think I would be willing to do some more hags, but obviously we got to figure that out. The hags are super fun to draw.
Well, Paul actually took the sea hag.
Oh, okay.
And he drew. He showed it to me. In true SagaBorn fashion, I see it half finished, and it's got this huge lobster claw in one hand, and I was like, "Oh, wow, that's cool." And he's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Well, I guess I need to check the description, like, because it better have a claw attack if it has that thing on it." And sea hags actually do. They have 2 claw attacks. So
it's definitely not, I don't know that I pictured her with a lobster hand, but hags are a varied bunch.
He's doing a really good job of like the whole idea of that it being so hideous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually, I told him that because he wanted it eating a fish, and I was like, "Nah, it's too simple." And so he changed it to where it's like eating the flesh out of like a knight's gauntlet.
Ooh, that's cool as hell.
Yeah, so that way you get that feeling that like, oh man, this is not something to mess with. I forget what the next one I've got lined up. I just finished the what was the big the Earth Wraith, which people voted online on which one they liked. It was cool. They liked the one that I liked.
Is that the one that looks like the Gale of Dur?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that one.
You see, I'm pulling it up here so I can see. Oh, Rob Schwab uploaded a new document today. He's working a lot on Todd's system this week, so that's cool.
Awesome.
So, Sam, you know a lot about 5th edition, and we're doing something that I found out that 5th edition did, but I don't know if they're doing it like we are. One of the backer funding goals that we're trying to go for, it's the top one, which I think, we're going to do it anyways, but if we get up to that, that means that we will do it and everyone that backs the Kickstarter will get it for free. But we're going to do a whole book of NPCs, and that's actually something that Aiden's working on right now. So he's doing themed NPCs from level 1 to level 8, and we're giving them names like warrior, like fighter, brawler. And so then if you are writing an adventure, instead of having to constantly make up NPCs for people to fight on, they can just say, okay, I want 2 level 4 brawlers, a level 1 or a level 2 ranged ranger, and like just grab these people and throw together a party really quick, or throw together NPCs, because it's something that always wore me out was trying to come up with an NPC like on the fly for a situation.
Yeah, so 5th edition does that. It's not extensive, but you know, like at the back of the monsters manual, there's rules for a veteran, which are the standard stats for like a veteran soldier who, you know, may have retired or might be a commander or something. There's also stats for a noble, and this noble assumes to be one that has a certain amount of like sword background, like he was probably taught how to fight. But there's also stats for a druid. I know in future supplements, like other monsters manual, they'll have stats for like the arc druid. So it's just, you know, druids at different levels with different names, that sort of thing. And you know, it certainly is helpful when coming up with games, but it's not like you're talking about where it would be a whole book that's comprehensive to every level of play.
Yeah, I brought 5th edition because people have told me that 5th edition does something like that. But actually, Rob Schwab's Shadow of the Demon Lord, when he did the conversion for the Crossing adventure over to the Demon Lord, it was he kept saying like this is like Wandering Guard 3, you know. And I was like, hey, what is this, man? Like it seems to be like you're able to go through where, you know, Sean went through and statted every guard. Though I think Sean enjoyed the flavor, and it wasn't just Sean. We had Adam Bennett came in and actually wrote a lot of the really cool Pathfinder NPCs. But as far as adventure writing, and also as far as GMing, just to like every time you get into a battle, it's sort of hard to go, okay, you know, this character is different than the last one. It is sort of nice to just go, okay, I need a 4th level city guard, and I know exactly what that brings with it, you know, and I can play that character against these players. And so without even knowing Rob's system, I sort of took from his conversion. I was like, oh, it'd be really neat if we did this. And I came in and talked to Aiden. Aiden's like, oh yeah, let's make this happen.
Are you going to account for race as well? Or is that more of like, if you add a race, just add these features?
So we're starting out simple. So here's my thought was we're going to do at least 2 of every class. So that way, you know, you have a nice range of NPCs to pull from, and then probably like some fun, like one-offs, you know, if like I have the Knight Commander, Sam, that you've seen in our game, where like, I don't want to give them his level all the way from level 1 to 8, but then like have a thing in the back for like high-end NPCs that are really like, you know, specialized. And but if I think I think it's a really cool idea. It's something that I always wanted as a player or as a GM, and so I think we would actually just keep adding to it. So we do like a whole group of dwarves, like maybe when the dwarf book comes out, we do a whole, you know, codex of dwarf characters that people could pull from. I know Aiden's down with that.
I mean,
I'm down for that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a cool thing to strive for. I also think for the most part, the races, you know, are pretty simple in their differences in SagaBorn, at least, you know, in the core rule book. I know we've talked about expanding race options with future supplements, but you know, like I mean, ultimately the difference between an elf is, I think, dark vision and a +1 or 2 to dexterity.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, you're right. We should definitely have something in the front that's just like, hey, if you want to change the race of this is all it takes to do it. You know, like sort of a reminder, because that's one of the nice things about the base system is that it's so simple to do that.
Yeah.
But I think once we re-release the elf book and then do the dwarf book, then we could make talents and do things that really add to the flavor and have NPCs that are really, you know, are examples of their races.
So my question, I guess the thing I'm most curious about is how are you guys accounting for legacy weapons on the NPCs? So like what I want to ask basically is like, are they full-on NPCs that generate legacy weapons, or are legacy weapons unique to characters that have a true saga, i.e., to use the name of the game, are like, is there SagaBorn in NPCs or like just as player characters are true SagaBorn, or is it are all characters with a level, do they get that same thing?
So I actually started something, and I don't know if it's up on Dark Return or not. Because I added that new thing on Dark Return where you can see like all the Google Doc files that I'm working on to add things to. Like someone brought up in the chat the other day, like the weight of armor based on size. And I was like, oh, I haven't ever thought of that. And this is definitely one of the benefits of having this up, because I was like, what do you think of 20%? He's like, I think 20% work, like, 20% reduction or addition based on the size of the character. And I got to add it right to the doc, and then it's right updated on Dark Return, so I don't have to do that like double update dance.
Cool.
So attacks of opportunity.
Do you have a thought as Mike's looking for that?
So the way I've been doing it, I have been giving them like legacy items, but you did bring up a good idea. I think it might be important because like Pathfinder has traits, and that's something only player characters can have. That might be an important distinction to give. Like only player characters get legacy items, or important characters that have this importance in the world get legacy items.
Yeah, so like that's one of the things I think legacy items makes an interesting thing too. Is like, let's say you defeat a SagaBorn NPC, and you're like, man, he had a flaming sword and it was crazy. But then you pick up the sword and you're like, oh, I sense magic potential in this item, but it does nothing. And you're like, crap, he had a legacy item. Like, you have to, I don't know if you'd have to like attune it, or regardless of the role-playing effects, at a certain level, you would have to select it as your legacy item to get it to do all the cool stuff it was doing for that dude.
Mm. That would be cool. Some sort of like attune mechanic or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the big difference, right? Like with say a more traditional 3rd edition setting, you need all the gear to make the math work. Mm-hmm. And SagaBorn's built in a way where, because it's only 8 levels of character math, it's pretty tight and works without that. Like, you don't have to have magic armor to have a decent AC to survive a level 8 encounter when your characters are level 8.
Yeah.
Granted, the character that does is going to be a tank and will, be able to go toe to toe and take advantage of that, but it's not required.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I just think it brings an interesting layer. I know Mike mentioned that you were talking about magic items in general, like non-legacy items all having charges, because the idea that like magic being more rare, that true permanent items don't exist outside of legacy items, or are considered like artifacts if they do.
Yeah, especially with you were talking about the 8 levels. I think it may work for better design. I think more interesting design to give these items like limited uses. So like a dungeon master will always know, okay, they'll have this many uses out of this. I don't have to worry about this item being a problem. Like, because in Pathfinder 3.5, even 5e, it's okay, I have my cloak of resistance. Awesome. Oh, I have my +1 ring of AC. I got my ring of sustenance, my bags of holding. And it's boring to like do the same thing those games are doing. So we have, it might be important to get items that have charges, so that way it's like a decision. It's not an upgrade. It's, do I use this now? Is this the right room to use this item in, right situation?
It kind of falls into the wand category in 3rd edition, where it's like, you have a ring of protection +1, but it only like prevents 20 hits.
Yeah.
So after you're hit 20 times, like the ring just crumbles or whatever. That's a very different item than a standard ring of protection.
Yeah, that would be, and that would even add some complexity. If you're like, well, if I'm only fighting goblins, do I want to wear my ring right now?
Yeah, right. Do I need the +1 to AC? Particularly if you don't get to pick when it counts, right? Like it's with something passive like AC, it's just always working or always not working. So
Right.
I wanted to play around with like legacy items that move beyond legacy, like legendary items. And this would be some interesting rules to play with in that like people project things onto things that have a story, and sometimes those stories are wrong. So like a legacy item that lives on even after the person is gone, but it doesn't work the same way as it did for them. It works the way that the legend has named it to.
I think that's a great idea, particularly if it then takes on like the quirks of the person who wielded it before, or the story. Like I love the idea of magic items with personality, but I also like it where they're sort of all cursed as well, but not in like the crappy way where like you have like the spear of backbending or backbiting, whatever it is. Like, I mean, I just like the idea that like, you know, you have a sweet, or the traditional one of, if you draw the sword, you can't sheath it again until it's tasted blood, right? Like that's a very classic mythology-based hindrance that a lot of cultures have swords like that. I know there's one in Celtic lore, one in Norse lore, and I'm pretty sure there's a samurai sword that has the same legend.
Is that the Zatoichi?
I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so like the item, you know, taking on those traits, I think is always cool. And then it makes like the item might be really great, but you know, maybe you also have to sacrifice a goat every couple of days or whatever it is.
Now that would be interesting. You're like, do I want to go adventure? I don't have goats.
Yeah, right. Well, no, you just go adventure with like a herd on, you know, like coming with you. Because like the first part of the adventure, that'd be fine. And then of course you end up getting attacked by some sort of like group of rabid wolves who eat your goat herd. And you're like, damn it, now I can't use this sword.
There's also the thing with like in Lord of the Rings with the One Ring, in that when Bilbo was using it, he wasn't using it for violence, so it acted completely different. And this is like a way that Tolkien helped explain the change that like in The Hobbit, he was just using it to do what he wanted to do, which is sneak around and not cause issues or have you know, or have to fight anybody.
Right.
And then as it went on, it changed into the Lord of the Rings when Frodo knew what it was and knew what it could do and the power that it could bring. You know, I think you could write some. You know, everyone knows I love consequence. So
yeah, I think that's good. And you know, bringing in Lord of the Rings, you also get the concept like too, where an item could affect certain races differently. Like in Norse mythology, Tolkien took a lot of the dwarf stuff from Norse lore. And one of the concepts is that dwarves sort of represent greed incarnate, and Tolkien really latched onto that. And that's why, like, Gimli's gift from Galadriel is the gift to no longer be swayed by gold. Like, she gives him the 3 locks of hair, but also says that gold will no longer have power over him the way it does the rest of the race. Yet gold will still be as plentiful for him as any great dwarven lord. And so, like, what if like there's items where like certain races covet them more, and so like they have to make will saves to not steal it? Or I mean, that's another thing, is the One Ring, even if it doesn't affect the bearer, the idea that everyone else wants it, like you know, Boromir only makes it so far before he's got to snatch the thing, and he very clearly loses control in that moment. So that's another like classic thing to bring in.
What was the scene? It was very. I remember watching it like as a young child and being very scarred when the elf lady tries to steal the ring, and she like has that like horrifying face.
Oh yeah, where she said, "I would be a beautiful terror," or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
Scared the hell out of me as a kid. Oh my god.
The fact that you watched Lord of the Rings as a kid just made me feel really old, though. I remember those movies coming out like when I was in college. We were so excited about going. Like, oh man,
yeah.
You know, that also like that was 15 years ago. So
Sam, that's my everyday working with Aiden is like, how can I make Mike feel old again?
What year did they come out?
2003.
Yeah,
I was.
Or 2002.
it was all of them. 2001, 2002, 2003. Back.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Well, we've covered NPCs, which is a funding goal that we haven't hit yet. So maybe we should circle back around a little bit to the monsters.
What's the first funding goal? Because we're so close. We're like $100 or something, $150 from funding goal 1.
Yeah, so it's new monsters and it's the servants. So it is the homunculus, the fey fox, and the dire raven, which are personal choices of mine for if I was a wizard, like what I always wanted as a familiar.
Okay.
And we don't have those rules yet, but I figured that'd be something that would come out in the magic book.
So homunculus is pretty classic.
Oh, my pizza's here. I'll be right back. Guys, who knows a pizza?
That's funny. Conrad in the chat said he thought you were talking about the animated movies when you said when I was a kid, which is true. I did watch the Hobbit cartoon when I was a kid in the 80s.
Is that the one with all the folk music?
Yeah, man.
I watched that this year.
Greatest adventure is what lies ahead.
When I watched that, I was like, "Oh, dude, that's the South Park episode with Lemmy Winks."
Oh man,
that's where I recognized that.
Oh man, that's hilarious. That's so funny. I also like that Mike, in addition to having a pizza ordered, he has this really sweet Lobo drink koozie that he's holding his beer in next to the DM.
Oh, I see that. Yeah. Where do you see the chat? I can't. Where would I find that?
So if you wanted to go for the chat, you need to find that link that Mike posted over on Facebook. But
okay.
Mute yourself because it'll take you to the YouTube where we're all talking, and you hear it with like a 30-second delay or whatever. And then you just need to pop out the chat from there.
Yeah. Cool. And I'll do that right now.
Yeah. When Mike gets back, I want to find out, like, obviously the homunculus is pretty standard, like fantasy. I think, every version of D&D has had a fun homunculus, but what in the hell is a fey fox? And I assume a dire raven is just like a big ass black bird.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty excited about the homunculus because I think they're really fun.
Yeah, well, they're a little different in every game and in every version, and I have the strange suspicion that Mike's version is going to be really dark.
Yeah. Like Full Metal Alchemist dark.
Maybe. I've never actually seen Full Metal Alchemist.
It's pretty good. I never finished it because they didn't have the last season on Netflix, so I was just like, okay, well, I guess that's where I stopped.
Right on.
So, excuse me while I talk and eat. I was thinking, of course, it's funny now. I get to talk to Aiden during the day at Eridani about monsters, and every time I think of new monsters, I'm like, oh, I need to take Sam out for a beer and we can talk about this. Because I was thinking about the homunculus of the more stuff that I think about within the world, the more we need to define like ritual magic, because I'm thinking like the homunculus definitely has to have a part of the wizard in it to even exist.
Yeah, typically it's. I mean, in lore, typically it requires the blood of the spellcaster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Sean just joined us. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, guys. I mean, I was confused for a second. It said Monica was joining us. I was like, "Who's Monica?"
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on my wife's computer. I couldn't get mine to work. I can get my computer to work.
No worries.
Sean, we're talking about some of the new monsters that are coming out in the next funding level. But I do have a funny story about the monster book for you that I don't even think you know that involves you. So anyways, with the homunculus, I was thinking like I wanted it, to be you know, sort of like sculpted, like a sort of like a clay thing, but then of course some dark stuff where they have to put the flesh of something that was important to them on the clay body. And I was trying to think like what, you know, this is hard in gaming terms because it just ends up being points, you know, like, but like maybe you put, oh, well, with the sanity stuff, maybe it could be that you put in some of your sanity that's in the homunculus. And if it ever gets killed, then you just permanently lose that amount of your sanity.
I can see sanity or like a constitution point. Though I would never, as a spellcaster, I would never build anything that required me to put a constitution point in it. It would have to be like the homunculus of badassery in order for me to that much. But like, I mean, you could sacrifice like a couple of hit points, then you're just like always down 2 hit points, or you know, I've you know, lots of different.
Yeah, I've got the stats for it, but I'm looking for that, you know, SagaBorn twist to them.
Yeah.
And then the next one is the Fey Fox, and I'm excited to say that that's the first creature that Sarah came up with, my sister, for the world. But it's got a really funny origin story because she played a feral elfling in the game that we played at the Ohio Renaissance Festival. But we always played after we worked a full 9-hour day. So she was like, well, I'm always going to fall asleep around 10:30, and then my character needs to do something. So she got an animal companion. She designed the Fey Fox that are mounts for feral elflings and a saddle. So that way when she went to bed, she would just strap herself to the Fey Fox, and the Fey Fox would become an NPC. So it's literally a monster that allowed my sister to go to bed early during a session. But she did a really cute drawing of it, and I always really liked the idea of it. And you know, foxes are neat anyways because they're sort of like half dog, half cat. And then like, what if this thing was like attuned to the Navirum or the in between a little bit? And the stats I wrote out for the Fey Fox is that it has true seeing at all times.
Holy shit! That's
wow.
Yeah,
that's like crazy powerful.
Yeah, so she made it a pretty high CR. So, you know, I was like, what could it be? Like, because it's not very physically powerful. But like with that, like, yeah. And then it works too, because if you're a hunter, if you're an animal that hunts things from the dream world, you always have to see what you're actually attacking, because it might not be what it looks like.
Sure, I can see that. Or you know, instead of giving it true seeing, you could give it the equivalent of the second level spell See Invisibility, which See Invisibility allows you to see invisible creatures and into the ethereal plane. True Seeing actually gives you even more than that. Like true seeing, particularly in your world, I imagine is pretty rare.
Yeah, it's actually not even a spell. So I was gonna like limit that to like artifacts and anything like maybe, you know, powerful rituals that could like enchant an item for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, so like what the difference is, like True Seeing allows you to find all secret doors, go through magical darkness. You ignore all illusion spells out to 120 feet. So like, I mean, if you think about like that combined with an animal companion, what you're suggesting is what you want to do is take the Fey Fox as an animal companion. That means a first level character can effectively have a 6th level spell on their fox, and as long as they, you know, have some sort of, you know, I forget what level they learn to speak to their animal, but it's only around level 2 or 3, I think. That's very powerful. Whereas the spell See Invisibility is easy enough to acquire on any spellcaster by level 2 or 3. They have enough mana to cast it.
Well, I was thinking, you know, like what we do with other things is a starting off point. We could tear it apart or add things as needed.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I mean, like I just hand it off to you and Justin, and you guys break it, and then you tell me. And then the Dire Raven, I just wanted a badass Raven. So I think that's all it says in my notes here is.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of having a Raven that's a small sized creature, because like the normal Raven is tiny sized. So just having a Raven that's the equivalent of like a 3 foot tall child. It's like a dog sized Raven.
That's about what it'd be. And the next thing you know, someone's going to be trying to ride it.
Well, that was my immediate thought is what you then do is you play an Elfling and you cast the Reduce spell on yourself so that you can be a tiny creature and ride the Dire Raven into battle.
Which actually leads to an NPC that Aiden's working on, which is the a Dispel Wizard.
Mhm.
And so all of your plans, Sam, would just fall apart the minute the Dispel Wizard shows up, and you turn to normal size while riding on the back of your familiar.
Yeah,
Imagine plummeting.
that's true. So in that case, I just need to have a legacy item that gave me Reduce so that I could ride my familiar.
Yeah, there you go.
So, Sean, I promised you a funny thing. Let me see if I can find it. So I realized that you'd written a lot of creature descriptions in different books of ours. And I don't know if you've read it all in the Google Docs, the Creature Compendium notes and stuff. Have you?
No, actually I haven't.
Okay. So, well, I'm ruining a little bit of fun for you, but what we did is we wrote the whole book as if it's from two monster hunters' points of view. Character that was like my point of view and then Danny's point of view. But then there's a lot of other stuff that we'd already written that sounded like either like it was very like sounded like it was from an encyclopedia or from like just, you know, a commoner writing down stuff. And so I said, well, okay, so there's more texts that all this information has come from. And so for yours, anything that you wrote as a for an adventure, I actually made a thing called Endemos Zoology by Sean Averitt, who is a person in the world, and it says that you're a Koalian librarian because you also invented the Koal librarians, and that you're just the expert on certain Endemos Zoology because all the creatures you'd written were for Fairyport.
Ah, okay, cool.
So you were both credited in the book as a writer in real life, and then you've been now made a character in the world.
Great, I love it.
That's awesome. So we got a suggestion on the homunculus in the chat, Mike. Bennett suggesting that you could sacrifice charisma points if you wanted to have another way of sacrificing flesh that wasn't, you know, constitution point based. It'd be like some sort of like ritual scarification or something.
You know, I mean, I love choice too. So, I mean, you could maybe choose what, you know, which one you're pulling out of to put into the homunculus.
It's true. But if we're going to do that, it would be awesome if you had to sacrifice 2 points of any ability score, and the ability score you pick gives a unique ability to the homunculus. So, like, if you sacrifice 2 points of dex, you end up with a speed-based homunculus. If you sacrifice 2 points of strength, you end up with a homunculus. It's still not going to be like the Hulk, but it's the Hulk of homunculuses. Like Constitution, it has more hit points. Intelligence, it can actually like maybe talk or, you know, like wisdom. Like I can just see all of them granting a different unique power to the homunculus. And that's something I've never seen a system do before.
I am writing that down right now.
Yeah, Bennett just said +1 to choosing that.
Would this disappear at some point? I mean, would you get them back? Like
yeah,
when
so the way it
or something.
The way it usually works is when your homunculus dies, you take damage, and then like it takes a week or something it depends on the story and the world, but you know, like a week or a month or whatever period of time that's significant but not horrible, you get your points back and you get the hit points back. But there is that like adjustment period where you feel the pain of the creature dying.
Okay.
Yeah, permanent sacrificing of any ability score would be awful.
Right. I'm like, my character would never do that.
Yeah. I can tell you right now, my character, the one, like I immediately begin thinking about how I would tweak that system. And I know that like strength is pretty much a dump stat for most spellcasters, with a few exceptions in SagaBorn. So the strength one should arguably be the easiest to do, because sacrificing strength isn't going to hurt a wizard that bad. But it should also be the least cool. Like your homunculus can carry a lot of stuff, but like that's basically it.
Yeah, maybe like also the homunculus's stats are all 10 except for the one that you give it as well.
Yeah, it could be. Although I imagine they should be way lower than 10.
That is true. Yeah.
Like most homunculuses have stats that are like 3 and 4, and they're terrible at stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Because I know if you got something that was that high, you'd probably figure out a way to break it.
Yeah, I mean, well, my immediate thought, of course, is, you know, it sounds great. Now I'm going to cast Bull Strength and Cat's Grace and Endurance on it, so that now it has a 18 Strength, 18 Dex, 18 Constitution, and I'll haste it and send it into battle for me. Because if it dies, I just take a little bit of hit points, and
you know, and then you cast Reduce on yourself, and you get a lance, and you ride it into battle.
Yeah, you cast Reduce on yourself, and then you cast Enlarge on the homunculus. So yeah, then you're good to go.
That's actually awesome. I have no problem as a GM with you doing that, because those are all fairly short duration spells.
I mean, the Bull Strength, I mean, those last it's like a minute per level. So I mean,
yeah, I mean that's one battle.
Yeah. You get one really great fight out of it. No. It's got.
Then you spent all your spells for the whole day.
Hold on, I'm pretty sure Bull Strength is way better than that, because I use that thing constantly in the 2 games I've played with Mike so far. I'm pulling up my SagaBorn rulebook right now. So note that special edition cover by Michael Blachik. Bull Strength is an hour per level, dude. So by the time I'm 5th level, that's 5 hours of adventuring. By that point, everyone's going to be half dead and ready to take a break anyway. But you're right. You're right about Reduce. I'm pretty sure Reduce is the one that's only like per round. But I think Reduce and Enlarge are, I don't know, they're super interesting spells. I was talking to Mike the other day about what barbarians in his system need is a legacy item that gives them Enlarge, so that they can actually really Hulk out and get a size larger using their legacy necklace or whatever.
Oh, well, yeah, I just looked it up. In 3.5, it's Bull's Strength, and all those are 1 minute per level.
Yeah. Yeah, you jacked them up pretty good. Which, you know, I think is amazing.
Pathfinder splits Reduce into Reduce Animal and Reduce Person as well. I don't know what I don't have the SagaBorn rules memorized, so I don't know if we just have a Reduce.
Yeah, it's just Reduce. A lot of that stuff's simplified, so it's just...
Yeah, we got rid of like all the, like just anything is a creature. So, you know, like there's, what were some other creature ones? But anytime that there's like a couple different things, I was like, you know what, let's just make it just one spell.
Yeah,
and,
that makes sense.
Yeah, like you have Hold Creature rather than Hold Animal and Hold Person.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, you mentioned chat earlier. I've got the chat open. I don't see anybody chatting.
So to get it, Sean, it's a different chat. They don't give us the chat for the people on YouTube. So if you go to the YouTube link that's on Facebook, and he'll pull up a thing, and you have to mute yourself because then you'll hear yourself talking. And there's a little chat button, and you can actually tell it to what is it? Kick out the chat or
pop out the chat? Yeah,
pop out the chat.
I'm not going to mess with that right now. You guys can just tell me if anybody's chatting.
All right.
Sounds good. So yeah, well, so I looked at the homunculus for 3rd edition. Challenge rating 1. It says it's strength 8, dex 15. It has no constitution because it's a construct. And then it's wisdom 12, charisma 7. So it has surprisingly good stats, in my opinion, for what I imagined in my head. Like intelligence 10, wisdom 12 makes it better. It's more aware than most humans in the system.
Yeah, it's crafty. That kind of fits with the lore for a homunculus, right?
Yeah. It can't speak though, so maybe if you invest charisma in it, your homunculus can speak. But anyway, like obviously you can change the stats, and it can fly. That's pretty cool. It has like little bat wings.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Chris Burdett actually did the drawing for the homunculus that's in the SagaBorn book, and I don't think he has wings, but I think we'll put something in there that could have wings or not.
It could also be a thing of like maybe that's what dexterity gives it, is the fly ability.
Yeah, that'd work.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
So,
that's interesting. You could give it dexterity to make it fly. If you gave it strength, it could not fly but run really fast.
Yeah, or maybe it could burrow.
Ooh, burrow.
Burrowing's fun.
Yep.
Or it could just hold more stuff. Like that's the other thing, is you could give it the equivalent of the dwarf ability or the endurance ability, where it can hold double a creature of its size and strength can normally hold.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have like a pack mule homunculus.
That's always useful.
Yeah.
So the next unlock after that are the giants, and I'd already talked to Sam because after your drawing of the Etna, I really wanted you to draw all the giants, and I'm hoping to make that work.
So if I'm reading right, it's going to be Frost, Hill, Mountain, and Fire.
Yes.
Well.
And we talked a little bit about it already, Sam, where you're talking about how D&D giants are straight from Norse mythology, right?
Well, so I mean, it's certain ones are like the Frost and Fire giants are right out of Norse mythology. In fact, they even use the name Thrym for the frost giant lord a lot of times, which Thrym is a frost giant that battles Thor in the lore. And then they use the name Surtur pretty often for the king of the fire giants. And Surtur is the giant who wields a flaming sword of the sun that will set the world on fire at the end of time and kill like half of the gods, including the first god to die, which is Freyr, the god of male virility, which I always thought was interesting that like male virility went out first. I'm not sure what they're trying to say there, but yeah, like the other ones, like I think it's like cloud giants are pretty, seem like something out of Greek mythology, if I remember right. And then, I mean, hill giants are pretty typical to most European mythologies, just the idea of like a big dumb giant. But yeah, there was a lot of lore related to the giants in general in Norse mythology because they're the main bad guys. Like there are no demons in the Viking tales, but fire giants basically fill that same role for most things.
Yeah, so what I was thinking was, and this is like really in the development phase, you know, if we get up to that, that it was, because a lot of these monsters, the history in the world is that they were brought over by the gods to fight in the god wars. And they got stuck here, or they were stuck in between. They've slowly found their way into the world. But I thought the giants would be really cool is if they were, and this is obviously simplified to be more like, you know, a legend. But 4 different siblings were brought into the world by the gods for the war, and their natural abilities were enhanced by the gods. So they were like imbued with powers. And So like the frost giant, I was thinking like they had innate magical abilities, they're immune to cold, and they can resist magic. Fire giant was immune and resistance to magic. They're the least common and immune to fire. Mountain giant was really high damage reduction because they have like rock-like skin, and they're also the largest. And then the hill giants, I also thought it'd be fun is if their thing is that they're just fertile. So
there's just lots of them.
Right. So they weren't as powerful as their siblings, but there's just more of them. And then I figure maybe some like rage abilities, and then all the giants would be very territorial, violent, and then also I was thinking the idea of them being like having really long lives, like living like 2,000 years.
I mean, that's pretty in tune with a lot of cultures' lore on giants, including I think Hindu culture has really long-lived giant creatures. But one thing, so I'm curious about is like where on Athles do these giants hang out? Like, is there like giant country, or is it that like, you know, hill giants are known for breeding a lot, but you know, is it like dragons and other systems where there's only like 10 giants anyways, or like how do they fit into the ecology of Athles?
Yeah, that was the thing, you know, like I always have these sort of vague ideas of like, you know, the fire giants being in these caves down in the desert, the frost giants being in the far north.
Not in here.
And I was thinking with them being really long lived,
Okay.
that they just wouldn't, you know, have that many kids, so they'd be pretty low in numbers. But that's honestly something that we could really jump in and explore.
I mean, it's an interesting concept because then you get to the idea of like, if they're low in number and if they're long lived, what's a reason, like, why would they take an action that could end their life? Not to say that they wouldn't, just what motivates a creature that can live for 2,000 years to risk dying to the point where it would come and counter. And maybe it's actually not intended, like it'll have stats, but maybe it's not intended to be a fighting-based encounter. Maybe it's a thing where like there's a certain piece of lore or magic that you have to convince a frost giant to teach you. You know, because if they've been around for such, I mean, by 2,000 years, like I think elves in your world only live for a couple of 100 years at this point, but there's legends that they used to live for thousands of years. So by that standard, like elves are even short-lived compared to a giant, which would make them, could make them keepers of lore, unless they're just really, really dumb. You know, in which case it begs the question, why are they so long-lived, or, you know, like still what motivates them?
Right.
And also, I was curious, are they magical creatures that have been gone from Athelis and have been in the Navirum and are coming back as well with the elves and so forth? Or have they been here all along?
Yeah, I'd definitely say because I think Ettins and ogres disappeared too, so they would fall into the. I think giants would fall in with the idea that since they're not from Athles, they would disappear. They would have been gone during the disappearance.
And so in that time, they were just trapped in the in-between? Were they aware of the time passage? Or is it like they wake up from cryo sleep and 1,000 years have gone by and they don't notice?
No, so the way that I've described it is that when you're in the in-between, you can still see both worlds, but you're closer to Athles and you can see what's going on, but time is passing faster on Athles. So it's like everything's sort of blurry and you're not actually able to, you know, you can't like listen in and things, and you can't interact with them. The thing I haven't played around with, but we've talked a little bit about it, is what would happen like when things phase back in to the world. Like, could a giant have been living in the middle of the city of Kowal and then just pop up in the middle of the city? And well, I think that's a very interesting thing, and I think that there's some stories to be told of that happening. I know there's a new group of elves that we're talking about where their city actually appeared right on top of another country's city, and it was like horrific. You know, but I don't want to make that the norm. I want it to be more, you know, like maybe that there's like a pull to get away from these places where you could harm yourself before you come back in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it also would be like, you know, obviously if they came back, so for them, they feel like a couple hundred years have gone by, but it's really been like 800 years. So in that time that they're stuck in the in-between, are they still on Atheles? Like if they have a house in the in-between in a certain part, are they just hanging out there? Like what's their living conditions in the in-between like?
Yeah, and so the physics of the Nibirum, like so the Nibirum is a whole different universe, and the physics of it is that it's built by the subconscious of the people living in the Nibirum, and the more people who are together in one place, the more their subconscious mind can agree that this is what the perception of reality should be. And so I've always thought that the in-between, being somewhere between that universe and the material plane, the real Atheles real universe, that they it's real and it's not real. And so, you know, I think when the answer to that you'd have to give in the gaming sense is what works for your story. Because I think there's a ton of cool stories to be told where this group of creatures that was stuck in the in-between built something, and then it came back into Atheles, and it's sort of warped in, you know, like
yeah.
Or you know, and that can get real. Like the nice thing is with a universe where things are built through our own personal perception of what reality is, you get to make the story whatever you want. So you could make it work out. I hate to make rules that say this always happened, because I think some of the best stories are when you say this always happens, except for this time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So Conrad's actually a really interesting question about the Creature Compendium in the chat. He's wondering if in the book it's going to say who was gone during the disappearance and who wasn't, so that you know, a storyteller running the game will know, like, if you see an elf, everybody's going to freak out. But if you see a dwarf, people are going to be like, well, dwarves are rare, but we know that those are around.
Right. No, that's really good. I'm writing that down to add that in.
Yeah, that'd make a really great sidebar or like a chart for the back of the book. Just creatures of the disappearance and not. I think that's a good suggestion. Because I know it's something we keep going back and forth about a lot, and the elf description talks a lot about it, as does the feral elflings, but it was still so early in the books that not a lot of information had been released.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of this is trying to keep up with which is all the ideas that are coming out, you know. There's a lot of stuff that's revealed through adventures that we've already done, or, you know, on darkreturn.com, but it hasn't been put down in one place. And you know, that's sort of the fun thing, is to slowly build that up. But also for someone like me that wants, you know, it's like I see this world so clearly that I want to share it. I just have to maybe learn how to type faster. I've actually thought about that. So I want to start writing some fiction soon, like after this Kickstarter, after this book is out, from the viewpoint of this guy that I've sort of been writing some little short stories over the past couple years. His name is Aeldin, and he's a druid who is sent out on a mission that he doesn't think he's going to be good enough. And he's actually in my head, he's the character that like Lone Wanderer Entertainment is named after. And basically everything, he always has companions, but something always goes wrong and he always ends up alone again. And so, they'll set me up with a nice, like, Conan type wandering story that I can come in and out of his life. But I was thinking one of the issues with that, especially in a world that is constantly growing, and you're setting more things down. I was thinking of starting the book out saying that, writing it from my point of view, that I see these visions of this character in this other world, and I'm just writing down the visions that I see, and I might not be seeing them correctly or writing them down correctly. So that way, if 20 years from now, someone can go back and they go, oh yeah, but in 2018, you wrote this short story. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I wasn't seeing the world correctly back then. Because that's really how I feel it. Like I've been playing around this world for 20 years, and it's so often like with the Giants, like I don't know what they're doing, and all I have to do is like spend the next month or two like thinking about them, like when I fall asleep at night, and all of a sudden like their whole culture just like sort of opens up in front of me, and I see what they're doing and how they worked within this world, like I struggled for a really long time with the elves on, I wanted the elves to be mainly non-violent, and man, I just went to sleep every night and I was like, what is it that would stop a whole culture from needing to be so, from needing ownership? Because that was the big thing with a lot of the elven cultures, is like they have lands, but a lot of them don't like say like this is my house or so on. And so it was the fact that the elves didn't need to eat as much as other people. And I realized, man, if let's say you can get by with just eating, a couple berries and a potato.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you don't have to have like farmlands. And if you don't have farmlands, then you don't have to fight for your farmlands to say, no, I need this space to survive. Mm-hmm. And that just took me a couple months of just, sitting there thinking, like exploring their culture, going, what's the day-to-day life of the elf and what would make them not be so violent, and it came back to I think that possession leads to a lot of, the wars and so on that we've had in our world. And so just by simply saying they don't need that stuff, sort of added to them, and it gave them a reason for how they are that way. And so that's how I figure out a lot of these creatures, is just spending the time and saying, what are they doing here and why do they do it? But
no, I think it's great, man. And the elf book, it reads, I'm actually not totally finished with it, but it does read very much like, from the human perspective, the little bits of information coming out, and each of the different elf cultures definitely share similarities, but have their own little quirks and unique properties.
Yeah, it was really interesting to write that, and I wish Danny was here to talk about it, because he pushed me so hard on that book to make it less of a just standard book on elves and more like, let's really get in there, let's see it from this point of view. And Danny always wants like a conflict to be part of the story, which I think really helped sell it. We had some stuff written for the monster book, and I don't think it really came through, but like it was Danny's character Delgon, who is a pretty non-violent wizard character that's hunting down these monsters, has a daughter who completely disagrees with how he deals with monsters. And it's like, I was like, man, we're just writing little snippets, and like, how's that going to play? And he's like, I don't know, but it's there. And I'm just going to let it happen if it happens.
That's fun. Well, and having read a lot of your descriptions, as I was tweaking the stats, like some of the stuff you guys had written was already there. the play between the two characters is hilarious. Like I love the way your guy's like, this is how you kill him. And then his character is always like, yeah, but do we have to kill him? Like the ecology of this thing, there's no reason it will come into a town. We can just let it be. You're like, yeah, but it's a monster.
Yeah, that's been pretty much like me and Danny's lives the whole time we've known each other. I'm like, dude, I can totally ride on the hood of this car all the way into the mall. And he's like, no, there's plenty of reasons to not do this, Mike. So then we'll move up to the next locked one after the Giants. And these ones are pretty funny. I wondered if you'd looked at those, Sam, and wondered what the hell I was thinking of.
So locked covers the last part. Does that say epic Navirite?
Yeah. So these are going to be like high CR creatures that I don't know if anyone could actually survive fighting, but they'd make really good like things in the background that could be like ultimate enemies.
Yeah, so I mean that's a unique thing. Like the way you have the like leveling past 8, you call them what, master levels, or so the master levels don't give you hit points really. Like occasionally you get a hit point here or there. They don't add to your attack bonus. They don't add to your saves. They give you interesting features that make it feel like you're leveling, but the game is very fixed at 8th level. So that means like CR8, which normally would take 4 8th level characters to defeat safely. That means that a CR10 monster is super powerful in this world, because it would, even if there are 6 8th level characters, they're still going to have a tough fight going against that. But once you go past CR10, like the death rate and the failure of the party goes up pretty dramatically.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously I want to also focus a lot more on non-violent resolutions to certain creatures, like the one that's listed as the evil eye. You're like, oh, it's just going to be a beholder. But I was thinking that like a creature that had like multiple eyes and like a really high intelligence that lived in the Navirum, where your subconscious changes the perception of reality around you. Like, how powerful would that creature be? And then how would it react in the world of Athletes, where like what powers would come over with it? And also something that intelligent. It's like, why would a beholder ever be hanging out in a dungeon anyways? Like, these are really smart creatures, like they shouldn't be living like, oh yeah, I just live between the bugbears and the ogre,
Someone says it's going to be the thing from Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, well, basically that, but more like if you took what was the guy that you dressed up as, Sam?
Oh, Lopan?
Yeah, if you took Lopan and put Lopan's brain inside of the evil eye thing. So I would see a lot of people like, there being a campaign where like you started out thinking that you're going to kill this thing, but then you're not. And then are you working for it, or, like where it becomes sort of like a strategy game against it. And then there's the Armageddon, which is really just what's the big thing, Aiden, in D20 that everyone pulls out to kill everyone?
The Tarrasque?
Yeah. There's a band that I used to do album covers for called Keymaster, and they had a bunch of really cool bad guys in their songs, and they wrote to me and they told me I could use any of their songs as creatures. And Armageddon was a creature that was summoned from the 5th dimension to destroy the world. And I was like, all right, that's a challenge. I'm going to make a creature based on that. And that's like the creature that like every lich in the world is trying to summon to be his like minion,
Armageddon does sound like an excellent name for a metal song.
Right. Yeah.
And so what's the other one? Moringu?
Moringu. Yeah. I had a nightmare about when I wrote that name down. I had a nightmare about like a snake creature with like 6 legs that ended in human hands. And I woke up and I wrote down the description of the creature, and I forget what I called it. It's like something like, I mean, this is in the middle of the night. I was like Morin or Marin or something. And then I just woke up and I just couldn't stop thinking about him. So I don't know what that creature's going to be, except that it's going to be really creepy looking. I'm thinking it would probably be along the lines of the Evil Eye 2, where it's like a really smart creature, but also like really creepy and hideous. Morning goo. Thanks, Brian. Brian, don't get Sean started on me naming things.
So I'm curious, like, so your idea behind the epic level monsters is just for the flavor that they add, essentially.
The flavor, and you know, I played EverQuest for a long time, and there's a lot of stuff that Sony made back in the day that they said, oh yeah, there's no way players going to be able to kill this. And then, man, you get players together, they're going to figure out a way to kill anything, no matter.
Well, that does beg the question, like, you know, so, you know, part of the premise of most third, you know, D20 based role playing games that use the CR system, the challenge rating system, is that it takes 4 people to go up against the monster. But what if you get 10 16th level or 8 level characters with master level 8 to go up against the thing? You know, like, would that make the difference?
Well, this would be something that Sean would probably know a lot about. In me and Aiden were talking the other day about how cool it would be to build out into like strongholds and henchmen and things like that. And Sean's 2nd edition did that a lot, didn't it? Didn't it have henchmen?
Yes, yeah.
So well, like 3rd edition had the leadership feat, which gave you a cohort and like a band of merry men to follow you around. And the cohort was like an NPC that was half your level or something like that.
Rangers get lots of followers in 2nd edition D&D too.
Well, in 2nd ed, a 9th level fighter got to build a stronghold and could have like 200 soldiers.
Right.
Yeah, so that like when I was a kid, oh man, I loved that. Like, you know, before I had friends that played D&D with me, I just played D&D with myself, which is also called writing fiction. And
is that where Morning Goo comes from? Yourself.
And so I really enjoyed, like, you know, I would play the characters through in my head, and I'd like, you know, make their stronghold and figure out all their followers. And I still actually have a lot of those notes on notebook paper. Like I would name like the generals and the sergeants and all that stuff going down. And I think it'd be neat. I think that's another thing that should come in with the master level stuff, where
that sounds amazing, actually. Like the idea, either a master level talent or a master level where you get to build your, you know, druid enclave or warrior den or wizard college, or, you know, like whatever it is, and lower level characters begin flocking to your aid.
Yeah, Aiden, is the one guy that you follow on YouTube?
Oh, Matthew Colville.
Yeah, is that what his book was about, like strongholds and followers?
Yeah, that's the I think it's the top grossing one in Kickstarter under like the same tags we're in. He made like $1 million on that Kickstarter. I was like blown away.
I think it was $2 million he made on a role play.
$2 million. Oh my God.
I'm looking it up right now. 28,918 backers for $2,121,465. I have never heard of a gaming supplement doing that outside of video games.
Like, there's someone at Wizards of the Coast banging their head against the table right now.
A 5th edition supplement. Holy crap.
In practice, what my players found from doing that was in the campaign where we literally ran characters for about 20 years, the high-level characters did build their own fortresses. The fighters and paladins built their own fortress. The priests got their own following, had their own temple, and the high-level sorceress had her own mage guild. And they find that maintaining that is a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of money. So eventually they wanted to leave it all behind for someone else to run and go back out and start adventuring again.
So, like, in practice, how did you run that? Did they, like, have quests or stuff that the reward was, here's a temple, here's some
no, it was purely money. It was purely money. They, you know, they had to raise enough money, and, well, it was money and, you know, saving the town or saving the world, getting them the notoriety that would come with it, so that I could say, you know, the people do worship you or follow you, or, you know, the priests in this area, because you're such a high level priest and you know, your characters have, you know, basically saved the world at this point, that then you would have a following. So it's just kind of subjective of, you know, whatever they were doing, what kind of quests they had done. It wasn't anything that there was a checkbox that said, you know, you do this, this, and this, and you can have this. It's just something that happened along the way.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so it's actually not this thing funded back in March 13th. So this thing's just barely over.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah, I backed it because I've been following this guy for a while, and I think 5e could use a good set of the Stronghold rules. I know 3.5 had them.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I've always found pretty interesting. It's really fun to, like, get graph paper and design your own castle and stuff.
Yeah, no, it was the thing. My favorite second edition world was Birthright. I ran so much Birthright, and what I loved about it is, like, everything happened at that epic scale of, like, you weren't just a thief, you were the master of the Thieves Guild, and you weren't just a wizard, you were the realm mage who could actually spend a month casting ritual magic and summon, like, a fog cloud that went through an entire domain, poisoning entire people, you know, like stuff like that. And I mean, there was all this other stuff that went behind it, but I love getting into, like, I don't know. And I also like your players will throw weird stuff at you. Like, I remember one of my friends was playing a fighter who was in charge of the realm, and he wanted to buy a pig for every member of his kingdom in order to foster, like the idea that then they could breed their pigs and feed themselves better. And so, like, there was this whole system built around, like, him trying to get enough pigs to give to everyone in his kingdom. And just, like, when else would you play an adventure based around that concept? And he just wanted to, he was, like, trying to be better at feeding his people than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds right up Aiden's alley here. He if you give Aiden a funny idea, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to make an adventure of that and play it online." Aiden, tell us about the game that you're running right now, seeing that we're running a Creature Compendium Kickstarter. Pretty funny.
My current game is like, everyone is a monster. So, like, we have the useless skeleton, and he actually made his character so he would be completely useless. And it's kind of a joke on modern bureaucracy. So, like, he's a skeleton, and he lives in this cubicle farm, and he designs traps and works traps for a living in the 6th level of the dungeon. And we got Mothman, who's this forgotten, like, monster. Nobody knows who he is. He walks up, he's like, "Yeah, I used to be the Mothman," and everyone's like, "Who the hell are you?" And that's all we got so far. A bunch of my players got sick for the first session, so we didn't get to play that much. But I think it's gonna have a lot of potential for, like, a short little game. It's pretty interesting. It'd be fun if we did that with, like, Danny, you know, and when we did the hag thing. If we did a game like that where you all pick monsters within a CR and we're like, okay, let's go fight a village or something.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, Mike, I saw over on Facebook in the SagaBorn Facebook group, which I'd encourage anybody listening to go and join, because then you can play the game and yell at Mike about what's good and bad about it immediately. And he responds. Like, it's pretty awesome to be like, I saw it the other night, someone was running a game and they're like, all my PCs are dying. Am I doing something wrong? And you like immediately got in answering his questions. But Bennett is asking for a link to the Kickstarter, and I was wondering if you could. I'm not allowed to throw links in the chat. Only the host can do that. And then I don't know if there's a link in the description on YouTube, but it'd be worth throwing one up. But if you wanted to search for Creature Compendium or SagaBorn in Kickstarter, you'd also find it that way. And I threw the link in the Facebook group.
All right.
Yeah, I just typed in SagaBorn and it found it right away when I was on Kickstarter's page.
There's so many times I forget, like, you know, so many links or tags, or like, how can I remember all this stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, and actually, it should have been in the description.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's in the description of the thing as well.
I figure we'll just make sure that thing's everywhere.
You, Sam, you've been doing a very good job of making sure it's everywhere for me.
Yeah, well, I think I've hit the limit of what my my flag can post. You know, like I'm all for setting up a signal tower for projects I'm involved with, but I'm not sure how much my normal art career crosses over with gaming. Obviously, there's some crossover, but
yeah, that's the, you know, that's always the trick with Kickstarters. You don't want to be an ass and post it everywhere, but you know, you want to make sure people see it.
Have you played around with well, maybe we don't want to make this chat all about your advertising ploys. I was going to ask if you tried Facebook advertising at all. But,
I've done it in the past, and I don't know if it really connected with people. But I think, you know, for me, the thing is just getting people to see people playing SagaBorn.
Man, that I listened to the podcast you posted. What was it called? The Called
Shot.
Man, that group sounds so fun. Like, I loved. I think part of it was something they must have developed being a radio show, because, like, obviously you can't. Like, they're describing what they're doing, but you can't see the battle map, or I don't even know if they use figs or, you know, how that. But they say, like, you come up on 3 houses. What are, like, describe the houses for me, and then the players would say, I don't know, one of them's green, and then another player would say one's purple. The other one's like one's blue, and they just go from there. And so I like that idea of, like, occasionally giving small things for the players to describe, but then making sure that they had a distinctive feature so they could speak about it in a radio-like format and not be confused about which thatch roof house we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, they were. Those are the guys I met at Chattacon.
Okay.
And they played both nights. They played the level 3 adventure and the level 4 adventure, the demo that I played. And they're actually the inspiration for the Chaos Wave t-shirt that I put out, because the mage just loved using Chaos Wave. I mean, he actually knocked out one of the players, I think, in the 4th level play test. He's like, sorry, bud, Chaos Wave. And those who don't play SagaBorn, Chaos Wave is an ability that wilders get that shoots out a burst of energy in all directions and hurts everybody around them. Apparently, if your wilder just doesn't give a damn about your hit points, you can use it quite often. He was the guy in the podcast, Sam, that was just doing days on everything.
I love the description. So he was playing an elfling, and I haven't finished it. I've listened to the first hour. I've got another hour to go. But I love his description of his item, that he had, like, the green man, which is like the leafed face that had 2 red gems for eyes, and that every time he used daze, the gems would light up. It actually made me really wonder what his green man sort of druid pendant would do once it got higher in levels and got more spells. Like, what direction does that thing go?
Yeah, listening to it, you know, like I've played a lot, like, with my friends, and I've played with people at conventions that are running my adventures, and I've talked with people who are writing adventures. But to have, like, you know, here's 2 hours of someone playing in your world like how they want to. It was really cool, and I wanted to. I was like, oh man, I do want to see them keep exploring, because like I feel that they had a really good grasp on the world, and I thought that they were bringing some really cool things to it. Of course, every time I typed them now, I always end it with the signature Dage/Chaos Wave, because that's the answer to everything.
Yeah, nice. Well, I mean, that's you think about it like initially, like, I don't know, casting Daze is whatever. It's a 0-level spell. It's not bad starting out, but as a legacy item, getting a free Daze every single round, that's a horse of a different color, because like, yeah, I'll take a random chance that the NPC just doesn't take an action.
Yeah.
Even if he only succeeds 25% of the time, that's an amazing item.
Yeah. Well, some of the legacy items that you came up with, Sam, I like that it spread out, because everyone I know that picks Magical Focus is like, I'm putting Daze in that. And so,
dude, the one I like just from 0-level spells, the other spell, Daze is an obvious choice. I think Resistance is also amazing, because just getting a +1 to all your saving throws all of the time. Like, what makes Resistance suck is it has a short range. Like, it only lasts like a couple rounds. But if it just lasted all the time, and then you start looking at the 1st-level spells, and it totally changes. Like, Shield is an excellent spell, but a shield that never goes away, always having a +4 invisible tower shield next to you, and makes you immune to the system's equivalent of Magic Missile, which is Mage Bolt, and you just have that all the time as a 1st-level spell. That's amazing. Like, then you get into the idea of like, it's good on a wizard, but like, what if the fighter has that item? Like, he's using a great sword and still has a shield and is immune to Magic Missile. Like,
ooh,
yeah, like it's the combos are delightful, I think. And then you get into, like, you won't get the 2nd-level spells or excuse me, the 3 mana spells until you're around 7th or 8th level. So that's a much later item. But the way you have the system built, you get an item around level 2, you get an item around level 4, and you get a 3rd item around level 6 or 7. And the way I look at the system, a lot of people are going to pick weapons and armor with those first 2 items. But everyone, in my opinion, should be taking the magic item focus at the high-level item, because it comes stocked already with all the lower-level stuff on it. So it's not like an item you're using along the journey. It suddenly has, a full set of powers as you go into it. And that's when, like, I feel like most level 7th and 8th characters, for that reason, can justify having a pretty tweaky item. That's where you get your, I was thinking about, like, the barbarian obviously takes the sword, he takes the armor, and then he takes the bear necklace that makes him enlarged and, gives him bark skin or something, or, like, it just, like, roided out crazy magic. Or even just a simple spell like Expeditious Retreat. Who doesn't want double movement all of the time? Like, that's her. Like, I just have 60 feet of movement always. Like, that's great. There's so many, like, just functional little basic spells that seem nice, but then they become excellent when you imagine them never going away.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You have those the core items that everyone wants in, like, a D&D game.
Yeah.
Like, it really is the exact opposite of, like, imagine a ring that goes away.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the idea that it should, like, this is where you get into, as a game master in SagaBorn, like, there's the rules as written, and then there's also that idea that it's supposed to be an item that fits with the story. So, like,
yeah,
if the barbarian's been wearing this bear charm, or maybe, like, by level 7 or 8, there's a shaman in his culture that does some sort of ritual on him and that results in the bear charm, or he has to kill a certain creature by himself to get it. Like, there's so many cool story things you can do that justify why this item affects him in that certain way. I don't know, it just opens up a lot of potential. It's not as dry as like I find the belt of giant strength and it's really sweet.
I think those old magic items like worked well for what gaming was back in the day. But I think now, like, you know, if you want to play that sort of stuff, like there's a ton of online games that you can play where you're just like collecting magic items and moving on to the next thing. And so
like let's be fair, Diablo is super fun to play, but like you're not really interacting with a bunch of other people, and it's not you and your friends telling a story together. It's, you know, dungeon delving and monster slashing or slaying, and that is really fun. But the other thing about it is there's about 10 different systems, 2 or 3 that are incredibly popular that you can just go do that. And so, like, if that's the game you're looking for, go play those systems. But like, what I think makes SagaBorn amazing is that it is trying to say, like, what if we did focus on the adventure and the story? And like, even in the book, it says that being a SagaBorn is like a unique thing in the world where they're like elevated to that heroic status.
Well, the thing that you brought up that I said to you at Chattacon when you're asking about rounded numbers, and that's my new catchphrase of when you're like, how do rounded numbers work? I was like, well, the game and the GM are fans of the players. So it rounds up to make the players when it benefits them, rounds down when it benefits players to round down. And I love that. And I love that we live in a time that is available. Like, I think that something about making games right now that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there is like, this is the way games should be. And now everyone's like, no, there's like so many games. I mean, you go to Gen Con, there's board games everywhere. So it changes everyone's mindset where they're like, I'm going to play this game for the thing that this game is good at, rather than I'm going to try to force myself into this game to get what I want out of it. Like, you know, no, if you want that out of the game, like if you want number crunching, then play Pathfinder, you know? If you want to like fiddle with those things and min-max your character, like that's what Pathfinder's good for. And I think that part of the zeitgeist of the gaming world that we live in now, that there's so many choices that a game like SagaBorn can come out and just sort of say, yeah, we're doing these things, and there's trust between the GM and the players, and not everything's perfect, and it works, you know, or at least from my experience, it's worked. I'm sure if Aiden plays this online on Roll20, he's going to come in and tell me that there's some real jerks out there. But
well, I did, and it ended up pretty okay. I feel like playing SagaBorn with people who don't give a shit about anything but fighting monsters, it turned out okay. You know, I was coming in and I was like, oh shit, this is not gonna end well. But no, it did. It actually, because there are mechanics in there that are based around people like being their characters, it kind of forced these players into becoming something that I wanted them to be, into thinking about who their characters were.
That's cool. That's actually really great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's good.
I think we've talked about a whole lot of stuff, and just a little bit about the Creature Compendium. Does anyone in the chat have any questions about anything?
You're asking about the in the chat. He's talking about regarding Diablo and you know why I think SagaBorn is great. When I was going on that rant about 5 minutes ago, liking what I said.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know what kind of a time limit you had on this, but I'm gonna have to bug out pretty quick here, guys.
All right. Yeah, I think we've sort of had an hour and a half party here, and you know, I think there's no technical difficulties this time, except I think I'm assuming that something happened with Danny, seeing that he's not here. He doesn't miss stuff unless he can't make it. And I'm assuming that his internet connection is messing with him again. But well, cool. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. I'm going to do a couple more videos before the end of the Kickstarter. I want to do a video actually that shows how I design a dungeon, which I think will be, I mean, it'll be fun for me to show everyone like how I start out with maps. And I use Photoshop, but you can use GIMP if you want. And I actually, on SagaBorn, you can download my map templates to get a start and see how I start off doing maps. And we'll maybe have a closing party whenever this is going to, you know, close up at the end, if everyone wants to show up and have some beers again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Mike, where's the best place for someone to follow SagaBorn? Do you have like a mailing list, or is it the Facebook group?
No, I don't do mailing lists. I think that the Facebook group is probably the best place to jump in. I can toss a link up to. That's where people are the most active. And, you know, I try to jump and answer any questions that anyone has. Yeah, I think that's the best. Everything else sort of auto-populates into there.
Cool.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks, everyone, for stopping by. Sean, thank you for coming while you're sick.
Thanks.
Aiden,
Good
thanks.
to see you. Aiden.
See you too, Sean.
Yeah, good to see you, Sean.
All right.
Catch you later.
Later.